Welcome. Thanks for joining us. We are Kelly and Christine at IFS Pathways for Perinatal Providers, and we're going to go into a heavier topic today, but we're going to talk about grief work and kind of combining IFS, like using IFS with grief work. And well, we always say, ask permission for your privacy, but that's not what I was going to say because now everything's okay. Um, that we like to talk about integrating IFS into the work you already do, even if you take like our full training or anyone's like training in terms of IFS, we find it really partners so well with so many modalities. And so we're not here to say like only use IFS with grief work. We're here to say like integrate it with the way you already approach grief work if you do, or if this is all new to you and this gives you some ideas for when grief comes up with your clients, great, take it with you and make it your own. That's what we like to say. So Kelly, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Kelly. I am located in Aurora, Ontario, so just sort of north of Toronto, if anybody's familiar with that. I came to IFS work really through my own perinatal journey. I experienced what at the time we were calling perinatal anxiety or postpartum anxiety. And I always tell the little story that I remember the first time my own therapist mentioned the word managers, and like my own little managers like perked up and were like, she sees me. That's exactly what I do. Um, and just really, really took to it from there. So obviously, as I said, mentioned that what I called then postpartum anxiety, I would now probably call autistic burnout in the postpartum period, knowing myself better now. But because of that, and because I took so well to IFS, I really did my own deep dive, and in I went. And so I have done, my training is through the IFSCA up here in Canada. I have done their Stepping Stones and Stepping Deeper program, and just found throughout like the training and then working with the perinatal population, that IFS was just this like really beautiful pairing, really a non-pathologizing approach that I think is so necessary in perinatal work. And so yeah, that's how I ended up here. Christine?
Yeah. I am a registered social service worker in Ontario. I'm in Oshawa, just east of Toronto. And I'm all virtual. And I came into private practice about 7 years ago, 8 years ago now. Holy smokes. And then when COVID hit, I pivoted to perinatal specific focus and did all my trainings, some through PSI International, which I know a lot of you know PSI, and Canadian Perinatal Mental Health trainings. For the perinatal stuff. And then I was, just trying to conceptualize like how can I kind of go deeper with clients? Like I love to make connections and go deep with, in the work. And my supervisor she mentioned IFS and kind of introduced me to it. And like as soon as I read this teeny tiny little book about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. I have found my modality that I feel like I can really ground myself in, and doing my own IFS therapy as well, which has been great, and just using it in my day to day. And so again, I found like it paired so well with what I was already doing and working relationally with clients, and of course, like bringing in skills that I've had from my previous years in agency work and stuff. And then I also so I did my IFS training with IFS Institute level 1, and then I've done lots of like kind of advanced courses through Life Architect. They're great. Check them out, Life Architect. And I'm also a supervisor. I provide supervision in Ontario. So I did the full supervision training, but I did a supervision, like IFS, bringing IFS into supervision. So I do bring IFS into my supervision work, which has been lovely and great. But most importantly, it just pairs so well with the perinatal population, and really like any of the topics that come up in the perinatal population. And the one today we're going to talk about is grief.
So as we jump into today's session, we're wondering how many of you, you can either like thumbs up, put it in the chat, whatever works for you. How many of you work with clients in the perinatal period who are experiencing grief? Yeah,
Yeah, head nods. Yeah,
yeah.
thumbs ups. Yeah.
And how many of you work with clients who are experiencing grief in the perinatal period, but whose clients have a really hard time naming it as grief, as that is what they are experiencing? Yeah, for sure.
Yes, for sure. Capital yes.
Yeah, definitely. So maybe this looks like a client who is like struggling with how their relationship with their partner has changed after having a baby, or who are struggling with how their identity has shifted after welcoming a baby or becoming a parent. That's where I know a lot of times, like I see it, I think Christine, you see it too, where it's just we're not so great here in this society with grief in general. And then when you have like these kind of experiences that are harder to name for clients, sometimes it can be liberating just to like give the clients the name of what they're experiencing. So when working with perinatal clients experiencing grief, sometimes like validating grief is necessary, but often sometimes it's just like doesn't feel like enough. Clients can feel fully understood and still feel stuck. Does anyone ever feel stuck when working with these clients? Perhaps wondering like how you can best support this grief. Same thing. Maybe thumbs up. Yeah. Um, Yeah. And so with IFS, you can help to support these clients by helping them to understand maybe what parts of them are experiencing the grief. And sometimes it's not all parts, it's just some parts that are experiencing the grief. And what parts might be blocking the client from accessing and feeling their grief and separating like what's blocking them, but then also the importance of like helping them to separate out and maybe process the trauma that may also be present. And so today, we hope that you are going to leave with the concrete tools in using IFS to support grief work and give you a little sneak peek into the deep dive that we do in our full training around supporting clients experiencing grief.
Yeah. And so we will say, of course, like, if you've joined us for any other ones, lunch and learns, even though we're only here for a short, for an hour, but we just want to make sure and take a breath that, for all of you, if you can check in with yourselves, if any of your own parts come up, whether it's your own therapist parts, or your own, grief related parts, anything like that, just making sure that you have permission from them that they're present and that, it's okay for them to be present. And if they need some attention afterwards, or maybe in your own therapy or, journaling with yourself or whatever that looks like, we encourage you to take the time to do that, but just making sure that we're always asking for permission, which is, we like to model that here because we also do that with our clients. So let's talk about, we always like to, and again, we know if there's quite a few of you who've been with us and been joining us consistently, which is so lovely. We love that. And so we don't want this to be redundant, but we do like to give an overview of the model for folks who have maybe never heard of IFS and they're just like, oh, I do grief work. And what is this IFS stuff? And so really, this is just a very super broad overview. And of course, like, in our full training, we go like deep dive into learning about each of these parts of the model. And so the model says we have multiple parts. And those parts can be feelings, thoughts, diagnoses, traumas, roles, parts of daily living, protector parts, and some of those protector parts, they're going to use either healthy or maybe not so healthy coping strategies. That's usually what brings folks to therapy. And at our core, we all have our self, the self, or self energy. And that's kind of our guiding force. Now, we recognize there can be so many variances and nuances in language, culturally with different families, people, countries, all that kind of stuff. It's whatever, for you yourself and your clients, how they say it. But that can be where your core beliefs are, your core values, like that really, like I said, that guiding force. And in the model, we talk about it holds these qualities of the 8 C's and 2 H's, which are healing and harmony.
Mhm.
Yeah, ooh, look at me. And like compassion, clarity, curiosity. For me, that's a big one. So we also really explore what is it like to be in self? What does it mean to be in self? What does that look like for us, for our clients? How can we kind of detect that?
Christine and I think, are both right now doing a very like big job of not diving into a very long discussion with everybody around what self actually looks like and feels like for you specifically, and not just necessarily what the textbook says that it should
Yes.
feel like.
Yes. I was like, stop talking, Christine. Stop
Yeah,
talking.
this has been something Christine and I have been like mulling over for like weeks now around how to talk through self.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. Okay, so when we are working with grief in the perinatal period, um, we know that grief, like you guys all just said, grief is a really common experience in the perinatal population. So obviously, yes, there is the like kind of, I think what we all think of as like the big grief, meaning like we're working with loss, but there's like grief is like almost a universal experience when it comes to the perinatal population. Why we really love IFS for grief work is that it's a really non-pathologizing way to understand, get to know, and support grief. So I would imagine too, if you guys, like you said, you almost universally see grief in the perinatal population, how many of those clients are experiencing grief, but then also think that there's something wrong with them for the feeling the way that they are? It comes back to that whole like, I should be enjoying every minute of it. I should be loving this experience. Like, why do I feel this way?
Yeah.
And so it's a really like beautiful, non-pathologizing way to actually look at grief and why it's there. As with any other modality, it's important to remember that new grief can activate old grief, and sometimes that's why it can feel really complex. And IFS, again, when we befriend the grief, is a really beautiful way to sort of start to like uncover the layers of grief that are being experienced as well. When we are using IFS to support clients experiencing grief, the goal is really to like use our own self energy and to help our clients access their own self energy and to help build a relationship with that grief. The goal is always to come into that self energy and build that relationship with grief, just like with other modalities. We're not there to get rid of the grief. And we're there to really build that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. So we wanted to ask, what are some examples, and you can shout them out, you can put them in the chat, whatever you'd like. What are some examples you've seen of grief presenting in the perinatal population?
Infertility, yes, not the birth that they had hoped. Absolutely. Infertility, loss of shared experience, imagined experience. Oh, they're coming in hot and heavy now. Experience of conception, pregnancy, miscarriage, stillbirth, grief around birth experience of traumatic breastfeeding, of difficult, even sex, gender disappointment. Totally. Birth or postpartum experience, not meeting expectations, grief and how their body has changed after delivery, becoming a mom without a mom. Absolutely. Not accepting it, loss of self, infertility, pregnancy loss, stillbirth, infant loss. I mainly work with postpartum, so I see a lot of grief in relationship to self, body transformations, relationships with partner, identity shifts, relationships, loss of identity, disappointment of sex. Yes, all of these are great. NICU stays for sure, reproductive narrative, grief of old life. Ooh, Christine and I often talk like I'm 8 years in, Christine's 18 years in. We still experience that, right?
Still miss my pre-kid life.
Yeah. Grief and trauma wounds reopening, becoming inignorable in parenting. Absolutely. It's a huge piece of this for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, expectations of a healthy versus non-healthy birth, absolutely. So many of those things. And so you all, really covered all of these. I'm pretty sure I saw in there some challenges with body feeding, time lost to a PMAD. That was one for me, like, oh, like those 6 months where I was extremely unwell. I can't get those back. There's a lot of grief there. Yeah, pregnancy release as well. So abortion or termination for medical reasons, having multiples, unplanned pregnancies, career changes, relationships, missing old life, fertility challenges, and any unmet perinatal needs, expectations, hopes, dreams. absolutely, there can be so much grief, you know, around all of those things. Yeah.
Two big ones too that I think that are not on our list that I just thought of as well is like having like the second child and the change in or the third child or whatever it may be, and that change in relationship with your existing kiddos. Um, I had a second one and it's gone.
That's all right. That was a
It'll
great
come
one.
back. So as that list shows, there's so much grief work when working with perinatal clients. So big question is then, so how do we support this in our clients using IFS? So how we conceptualize it is that we can use the core steps of IFS. So there's the 6 Fs, if you're familiar at all with IFS, that we're going to work our way through. I think for Christine and I and how we're going to present it today is we really sort of see it as the 5 Fs of using IFS to work with grief. So step one, the first step is to just have the client identify their grief. This is the 6 F, which is find. So find the grief. You can invite the client to do this by saying things such as, what are you noticing right now? Do you notice any sensations or feelings in and around your body? What thoughts do you notice? We are always seeking permission when the client identifies the feeling, thought, or emotions. You can ask, is it okay to stay here? Is it okay to spend some time with it? Is it okay to be with this? Um, and so one of the things you may notice there is if you do have any sort of previous IFS training, it's often brought up, find is often like what sensations do you notice in and around your body? Christine and I often add in that, like, what are the thoughts that you are experiencing? Just because we want to also be neuroaffirming. And we recognize that not everybody has the same sensations in their body. And so sometimes we like to, like, we often will say, like, what feelings do you notice in your body, or what thoughts do you notice? Anything like that.
And so then the next one, and I'm just wondering, no, okay. Sorry. Sorry. I just wanted to see if I had a separate slide for each one. So the next one, once, the clients really identified where the grief is, what's that like, then we want to keep focusing on the grief. And like Kelly said, like, is it okay to stay here? So now we're going to really focus on, as much as feels comfortable, turning your attention inwards towards that grief. And, I'll say something like, I invite you to really notice if, that heaviness in your chest. And I'll always use the client's language, the words that they said. If like I feel really heavy in my chest or in my stomach, there's a pit in my stomach. Is it okay to really sit with that pit of your stomach? What is that like? Do you notice what happens when you focus on it? Maybe like, does it get bigger or smaller, or it stays the same, or does the feeling shift and change? Just really staying with that. Any other sensations, any other thoughts or feelings that are coming out with that?
So the next F is flesh it out. Christine and I both say we just kind of have this like still like this like visceral, like we have very visual with the word flesh, but the third term is flesh it out. And so this is when you're inviting the client to separate the grief from their whole self, which sometimes can be like much easier said than done. But you can ask the client things like, or prompt the client with things like, as you focus on the feeling, the thought, the sensation, can you visualize it? Can you visualize the grief? If so, what do you notice about it? Get them to describe it to you so that they start to maybe get a little bit of separation. I would say like a lot of times I hear it as like, it's a cloud or it's a darkness, something along those lines. As you focus your attention on it, does it grow stronger? Does it get weaker? Does it move? I always give like an and or. This is just for me because I never want to imply that the part should be doing something or that their system should be reacting in a certain way. So I will often say something like, do you notice it getting weaker or stronger, or does it stay the same? So that hopefully it doesn't feel like I'm either trying to lead them or that there's a right way that they should be noticing this or experiencing it. One of my favorites that I really like, I learned it from Derek Scott, for anybody who knows him, is I will say things like, I will even sometimes practice it by just being like, it sounds a little bit strange, but can you just try turning towards it and saying hi to the grief and seeing what happens? Yeah.
Yeah. And also for those of you, again, I just want to make sure because I think also, Kelly and I have been doing this for a while and we know IFS really well and a lot of you know IFS really well. But for those of you who don't and are really new to it, when we say like we're trying to in this step get them to separate, again, we don't mean that in a like, let's separate and then push it aside. It's really, especially if people are feeling overwhelmed by their grief, we want to really convey to people it's okay for your grief to be here. It's welcome, in the space that they're in with us. Um, and if they're feeling overwhelmed, we want to support them in getting a bit of separation from that part so they can still grieve and feel sad and hear the thoughts from the grief and all that without their nervous system being totally flooded and overwhelmed. That's what we're trying to support by getting a bit of that separation. So I'm just taking my coaster here, but when it's like, I'm totally, you know, in the,
Overcome.
yeah, overwhelmed and I can't cope and I can't speak and I can't articulate my words and I can't figure out what's going on with me. And then we get a bit of space like, oh, that's the grief. And that might, it might feel a little less tight in the chest or the stomach, or now I can start to go, yeah, I see how sad I am with that grief. I see the memories in there or the thoughts that are, tied to that grief. Um, that can be really, really helpful. So that's why we also do that, flesh it out to try to unblend, as we call it in
That's
IF.
what I was going to say. And in technical IFS terms, that would be called unblending.
Unblending, yes.
Yeah.
And so the next step is we want to assess how the client feels towards the grief. And this is where we're going to find out if the client's self energy is present. And again, I want to reiterate that it's not an all or nothing. It's not a like, oh, I have to be totally in self or not. We can have slivers of self energy. We can be grieving with self energy from self. It's however the client conceptualizes it and how you conceptualize it with them. And so when we ask, like, how do you feel towards this? This is usually where we're going to get some of these other parts. And this is where IFS can pair so well with grief is like, you can do grief work, let's say, I know we're going to talk about this, but continuing bonds or, whatever grief techniques that you're using, grief rituals, things like that. And then we can use IFS as well to work with these parts that maybe are judging them for grieving, right? Like, well, I shouldn't, okay, there's a lot, right? But like, I shouldn't, feel so bad about it, about my birth. Like we're okay. We're safe. We're alive. I've heard that a lot.
We're
Literally.
fine.
We're fine. Like, and it's like, just dismissing the grief, right? But so then we want to work with those parts if they come up. If we say, how do you feel towards the grief? Well, I'm so annoyed with it. It's like, it's still here. It's a year later. I don't know what is wrong with me. And, why am I not coping? So then we want to focus on that part. Hey, part, where do you notice that in your body when you say like I should be over it by now, it's been a year? So this is where we can really come up on those roadblocks and finding parts that are worried, maybe worried about grief and work with those parts that are angry. Oftentimes we find a lot of anger that's present in protecting us from feeling the vulnerability of grief because anger is very action oriented. When I'm angry, I can make changes, I can say a thing, I can do a thing. When I'm in grief, like we said, there's nothing to do but feel. And that's super vulnerable.
So once you've kind of worked with any of those parts that are maybe blocking the client's access to grief, you've worked with those, they're able to soften back and let the grief come forward. Then we're going to do the next step is befriend the grief. And this is where a lot of the like grief work is going to happen. So once you have spent that time with any other parts who have presented and we're able to turn back towards the grief with access to that self energy, we're going to befriend the grief. So you can invite the client to do so by asking things like, what do you sense about the grief? What does the grief want to tell you? What does the grief need? And you don't have to refer to it necessarily as grief. You can use the client's language, but we're going to use the word grief for now. What does it need from you? From me? How does the grief wish to be honored? Sometimes I'll even in this like step like even say something like, can we like treat the grief kind of like a friend? And could we like visualize sitting down on a park bench with it? We just want to get to know it. Something like that. Again, whatever feels natural with the client that you're working with. And this is really like that wonderful step in which you can integrate any other grief counseling techniques you already use, such as grief rituals, continuing bonds, especially if you ask that question along the lines of like, how does the grief need to be honored? That's where you can get a lot of the information about what the client needs.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so in saying that, that's like the 5 steps to just like getting to know grief using IFS. So there should be, I think Christine's gonna pop a link into the chat where you can grab a handout that you can use with some of those guiding questions that you can use right with your client. So be sure to click on that link. It'll take you right to it. Feel free.
And
Yeah,
yes, so sorry, Kelly.
yeah.
Kelly and I like to just jump in when we have itchy thoughts. But so that framework that we have up on the screen right now, it's there in the handout, but with the questions that we said out loud. So it'll be there for you in the handout. So like you could have it with you and use it. You don't need the full IFS training. You could literally just follow that and make it your own and add your own questions there and use that if it lands for you. And we really spend, we talk about grief on day 4 of the course. However, this process of really getting to know parts, really, being able to kind of separate these the parts from that come in to protect us from maybe getting too close to parts. We spend like a good 2 days about learning, that specific process. And then, we practice it together and we practice it in small groups to be able to really integrate that work. And so, we do really slow down and take our time and get a lot of practice in with that. But that's also where and we talked about this in the birth trauma course, but like finding those parts that are like the trauma parts, which again, you could either use an existing modality that you already use for trauma processing, or if you're trained in IFS and you use IFS regularly, then you could use IFS to do the trauma work. So really that's why like it's just it
You
we
often have to do the trauma work, just like with any other modality. And if you didn't see our lunch and learn on birth trauma, it's on our website as well, if you want to take a look at the recording from that. But
yeah.
we had talked about in that like you do the IFS trauma work first, and then often following that, you need to do the grief work with the grief that shows up behind that trauma as well.
And also, it's not always going to be that linear. It could be, at the same time, it could be back and forth, messy, all the things.
So we're going to show you a brief clip now. So we often do live demos, but grief is a pretty tough one to kind of like tap into in the moment. So we are going to show you a brief clip. It's about 10 minutes long of a previous session that Christine and I did together on perinatal grief. So in this context, so we're going to drop after the demo's done. After we show it to you, we will put a link in the chat as well to the full, it's about a half an hour long, I think, the full clip. And in it, Christine is the therapist, I am the client, and it's real. It's going to show up first in the full clip I presented with rage and anger. And so the part that you're not going to see to begin with is getting to know and befriend and unblend from the anger, the like mom rage, as we so
Yeah,
endearingly call it. It's there first, and then once we get the anger to soften a bit, it tells us it's protecting me from this feeling of grief. So we will show you that now. And please, like we said, take care of yourself. Ask permission from your parts. We know this can often, many of us have ended up in this work due to our own experiences. So you are welcome to move around, go off camera, step away, whatever you need to do.
absolutely. I'm curious to know for that angry, raging part that sits in your neck and that feels tight and tense, does it feel like it's affected?
No, it's funny. Like I don't feel like I have. It's not a strong part of mine. Like I'm generally not a super ragey person, like that part isn't there a lot. Um, it's actually like it's just opening, like even now it's just like it's kind of faded off. And it's just like it actually feels it looks my nurse part, I think. And it's given me like the actual like visual of a wound.
Okay.
And it's just like pops me into it.
Okay.
Like just in it.
Is it okay to sit with that visual and see that wound? Is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Do you get a sense of like what that wound is? Do you want to describe it?
Yeah, it's just really sad. Um, there's like it's a pretty complicated, like it feels like a semi-complicated like there's just a lot to it in that there's a lot of sadness for what that first year looks like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even it brings me back to the like you're saying like you know what it's like too. And like when there was good days,
Yeah.
it almost felt worse because it was like it just felt like there was so many more bad days than good days.
Right.
Yeah. And then it's like there's also the complexity in it around of like for a long time I had this thought of like there will be a do-over with the second one, like a second kid.
Yeah.
And
And
you'll get that. Sorry.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
You're just like you'll get that postpartum experience that you wanted with the second one. Because you know so much more, you have so many more supports. And then there's like the compounded grief of like there never was a second one.
Awesome. And so that there's that grief, it sounds like you said compound, it sounds really heavy. Yeah. And what do you notice about that wound now that you know, it's been shown to you just now, and is it still looking the same?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have that visual of that wound. So does that anchor part protect, distract you maybe from this wound?
Oh yeah, like the time leading up. Yeah, it's just like it almost feels like it's like showing me sort of like it pops in to do its duty during that time.
Yeah.
And then it goes
Right, because like you said, this is not like like it's not there all the time. It's just really kind of time restricted, like this time of year coming up to his birthday.
yeah, it feels a little bit like I'm not sure if it was I'm not sure who it was that just said like, oh, you're just way better at like shoving it away the rest of the time.
Oh, okay. So maybe the wound needs your attention.
Yeah, like I think it just like I've never talked to anybody about it ever. Um, it's one of those like it's a part that like it's a minimizing part, right? And, like your experience wasn't that bad. Just
Right,
get over it. Kind of like suck it up and move on. Right?
right, right. And have you been able to do that?
Yeah, for like 49 of the 52 weeks of the year, I can do that.
Okay. And so those 2 weeks of the year, though, it's still there. It comes up every year.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
And then the like raging, there's like also a group there that's just like, there just isn't the space to like experience it. Um,
In the way you need to?
yeah. Well, like I have another voice that's like, you could do that with a therapist. Like there's like some sadness there. Like major supportive people in my life just wouldn't.
Right. And so what if those parts of you, I know there's several parts here, but how do they feel about that? The major supportive people around me just will never get it.
I think there's a combination of like understanding. I was like, of course, I'm not gonna get it. They didn't.
Right. They didn't experience this.
And, but also just sadness, right? It's an isolated feeling.
Right. And so that sadness sounds like grief. Is that right?
Yeah.
Right. What's your relationship with your grief part? Like,
But we're pretty standard.
okay. I'm curious to know, could you ask the grief part what it needs from you, what it wants from you?
And I just heard like, just acknowledge it.
Yeah. Because we know grief doesn't go away. Right? Whenever, even when Kyan's 20, and you think about, and I don't mean to say that like there's no hope, it's just that whenever you think of that experience, that sadness and that grief around how that experience was for you will always be there, right?
Yeah.
And what would that be like if you did acknowledge that grief part every time it came up and just sat with the feelings? What do you think that would be like?
Yeah, it's funny. So to begin with, when you were like first talking, it was like this, like, the grief feels like if I picture the wound, it feels like a sinking into it.
Yeah, okay.
Kind of gross. But so there was like this initial like sinking into it, but then there was also this like as I like kind of acknowledged the sinking into it, then there was this like acceptance
Okay.
of like the continued like compounding sadness of like right, the sadness that that is the story, and that even when he's 20, that is still part of that story.
Yeah.
And but then there was also like in the self energy that was just like right, but that is part of the story.
Right. And I wonder if the anger part trusts you to be able to acknowledge and sit with that grief every year.
Yeah, I just got this like a little bit more of a visual of like um, it doesn't look like the moon anymore. And it was just this like grief of like sitting beside the grief and like almost like holding its hand to not hold it. But just like sitting with it, right? And being like, hello, old friend.
And do you get a sense or visualization of what that wound looks like now?
No,
Okay.
it's not quite the same. It's a little like visualless at the moment.
Okay. But you kind of have a sense that you're holding its hand and it's an old friend.
Yeah, like I'm not holding the open gaping wound's hand.
Right. Yeah, it's shifted and changed.
Mm.
What do you notice in your body right now? What do you feel?
Like more of a sense of calm.
Okay.
More the like dropping feeling for me, what I get.
Into the cell?
Mhm.
Okay. Is it okay if we check in with the anger part? Just see what does it make of just what happened right now? And that is the clip. So we know that that's, it's sometimes, even though it can be hard to watch clips because, for us, those demos are real. So any demos or, when you watch the Lunch and Learns, other than like one scripted one we did, but they're Kelly and I, they're our parts. So they are real and raw.
So I was like, and you probably saw some pretty good parts of mine that showed up that were like, I'll just distract myself over here for a few minutes so I don't, because this is not the time to just sink right into that grief again.
Yeah.
So as a big thank you for being with us today, Christine is again going to drop the link to the full demo where we look at the anger as well and befriend the anger as well. And then there is also a link to a resource page in the chat. It contains kind of the full grief demo session as well as the handouts and the slides as
No
well.
slides, no
No
slides.
slides.
Yeah.
Just no slides.
So,
I think
yep.
that's why I looked at you because I was like, I think that's a lie. Just a little the handout for you as well. There is also a sample of just it looks a little bit of what our like workbook might look like for the full training. And I think there's also a parts map tool that you can use in there. So if something like the anger showed up first, you can use that parts map to start to map out what all is showing up for you.
And also, like, you can watch the past lunch and learns where we talked about those you'll see the past handouts as well. So if you haven't checked those out, go for it. They're up there, they're free. And you don't have to sign up for the past ones. You can just watch them on the website. And yeah, I mean, also, I just wanted to kind of go back to the clip for 1 second of just if you notice, like we mentioned, right, of that IFS helps us to discover like those other parts that are in connection to grief or maybe in polarization or conflict with grief. And we saw that there with Kelly, right? It wasn't just sadness, right? Or it wasn't just perinatal rage that we had explored at the beginning of the session. You'll see that in the full clip. There were many, many parts, and that's how it is. It's not, just this smoothish kind of like, hey, let's chat about this one part. Sometimes you'll have a whole session where you're just meeting a new part, saying, hey, what's up? Okay, how do you feel towards that part? Oh, now here's another part. Here's another part. So yeah, I thought it's Kelly's real life, but I don't mean to say like, oh, it's just a great clip, but also it's a great clip. So so yeah, just thinking of, again, like kind of what I was just summarizing, but kind of those key considerations to remember. And I'll put the slides back up because I know I'm a visual person, so I like to see the slides. Those key considerations like we talked about of helping us separate grief from trauma, and whether you do that with IFS or with the modality you currently use, but IFS can really help us do that, and we can heal the trauma wound with trauma processing and then do the grief work, kind of in tandem or separately, or sometimes a little while down the line, whatever that looks like. With trauma, there's always going to be grief. So just remember that. But, if a client comes to you for trauma, there's going to be grief there. And so remembering, like, weaving those techniques together, we are not like, oh, IFS is the only way to go. No, we love IFS because it does pair so well with existing techniques, whether you do EMDR or brain spotting or, again, any type of grief, grief counseling, it just works really well. And of course, you can use this technique in like these 5 Fs that we call them with grief work for any population or period of time. It doesn't have to be specific. You can absolutely take this, run with it, adapt it to any client at any time in their lives. And so we have kind of a big question that Kelly and we like to ask big questions of ourselves and mull these things over. And I don't think we're going to get an answer today, but is grief always a part? Or can grief be a self-led response to loss?
We don't expect you to answer this. It's just a question. These are the kind of questions that we get into in like our full course as well. It's just something we encourage you to take away and think about and how you conceptualize grief work as well.
But if anyone, we can pause there for a minute, but if anyone, or a second, if anyone, has any thoughts on that, feel free to drop it in the chat. Oh, we have something.
Can you repeat it? Sure. By self-led response. So really the question is, and this might be for some folks who maybe have a like stronger understanding of IFS, but the idea is like in the demos and stuff that we talked about today, we really looked at it as like a part. It was a grief part. But I think our big question is grief always a part, or is it always a part grieving? Or can we grieve from a place of self or self energy as well?
Yeah. And Lisa, for example, said both depends on how the individual experiences the grief. At the end of the day,
That's kind of
no
how we,
matter how much we philosophize about these questions, yes, it's always about how the person in front of you conceptualizes it. Absolutely. So something to take away and think about as we are always taking away and thinking about these big questions.
And so speaking of our full course, we want to give you some details about our upcoming September cohort. This session showed you how to spot grief and start the relationship. The training is where you learn the full sequence, telling grief apart from trauma, working with the protector parts that block grief, like anger, the moving on parts, and what unburdening surfaces afterwards, since grief often shows up after an unburdening, and that's what we call trauma work in IFS. We truly believe that using IFS with the perinatal population allows us as clinicians to move beyond just coping skills and to move to true relationship building, and allows us to heal the wounds underneath. We know how frustrating it can be when you feel like you are barely scratching the surface of what's going on with your clients. And that's why we created this course to use specifically with the perinatal population. So Christine's going to pop a link to the full training in the chat. Our September cohort begins September 16th and runs for 4 Wednesdays from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's $1,600 in full, or payment plan options are available. We have 2 payment, 3 payment, 4 payment plans. If you're a Canadian resident, there are applicable taxes as well. As a big thank you for being here today, we invite you to use the code 10OFF for the September training. This applies to all the payment plans as well, and will give you 10% off the training. It will remain open for 1 week. As an added bonus, we are also offering anyone who registers between now and next Wednesday the opportunity to attend one of our consult groups for free for 1 session following the training. So it's a highly experiential training. We are quite passionate. We bring some special interest energy at you with our training. We're going to have, there's live teaching, demonstrations, practice opportunities, lots and lots of practice opportunities during each week. And we do have a small cohort designed for meaningful learning and connection. We currently have 5 spots remaining for what will be our final training for 2026. If you're thinking this is the direction I want to grow clinically, we encourage you to book a 15-minute conversation with us. If you're not sure if it's exactly the right fit for you, we popped our email in the chat as well. So if you want to send us an email with any questions or to set up a call, please feel free to do so. If you know you're ready, you can register directly at the link that Christine provided. Either way, we would love to continue the conversation with you. You can sign up for our newsletter and stay in touch. We will have monthly lunch and learns coming at you. Our next one is in August. And yeah, we'll stick around for a few minutes after this if you do have any questions for us.
Yeah. And yeah, so in that, does anyone have any questions for us? And our next lunch and learn next month will be thank you, Laura.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for coming, everybody. Is neuroaffirming care, and really talking about integrating IFS with clients who have ADHD or are autistic or ADHD. So we're going to be talking about that. Yeah, no problem, Karen and Kayleen. Thank you. Thank you, Kayleen. Yes, Kayleen's joining us in September. We're so excited. Any questions, even about grief work, about IFS, anything like that?
How do I register? We'll pop for September. You're going to get an email from us as well. But I'm going to pop it's right on the website.
Got it.
You got it?
Oh, I put it in. Yeah. Thanks, Amber. Yeah, you can go to that link and check it out. You'll see the payment plan options are right there. There's no It's not hard to find. They're not hidden or anything like that. You don't have to ask for it. They're all there.
Liz asked, great topic. Is this course a more in-depth education of all your lunch and learns? Yes, so definitely. It's a full IFS training, so you don't have to come in with any knowledge of IFS of the first, so we do the full training of what the model looks like, how to use the model, and then how to use it specifically with the perinatal population. So lots of in-depth stuff about intrusive thoughts, how to use it with like postpartum anxiety and depression, identity shifts, birth trauma, grief. And then, so it's not just the didactic, there's the didactic portion of it, but then each week we also go off into breakout rooms to actually practice using the model, both on your own, but also with us as well. Hopefully, Liz, that answers your question.
Yeah. Yeah, and the neurofirming next month's Lunch and Learn is already open. So if you head to the website, you'll see it there and you can sign up already. Oh yes, Amanda, if I will put um the handout link again. Let me find it. There you go. Hopefully I put in the chat, Amanda, Logan, if you're still here. The handout. Oh yeah, you are here. The handout link. I'll put the demo link again too. There we go. Any other questions about IFS?
Oh, sorry, Tiffany. Yes, I did miss your question. So the IFS books are those recommend, my question seems to have been very quickly. I was asking about the IFS books. Are those recommended readings?
Oh, from Richard Schwartz. Yeah, I mean, he created the model. It depends. Like if you feel like you have a particular interest or you're just looking for broad, like I'm just getting started with IFS, go with those. There's also, we're gonna talk a lot, but there's Wired to Feel. And she talks about, IFS with the neurodivergent population with folks who are autistic and ADHD. What else, Kelly?
Tiffany, if you have a specific question about a book, feel free to email us. I can't think of them off of my head, but there's ones around like, there's all sorts of books out there. There's like around IFS and complex trauma. There's like a bunch of different. So if you have like a specific one, feel free to email us and we can try to find you a resource.
Also, and I'll put it in the chat, but Frank Anderson, he's also pretty like well-known IFS trainer, doing his thing now, but he has a couple books out that I really like his writing style and just how he explains
Christine
IFS.
and I love Frank Anderson. We very much relate to his style.
We do. Do you have a link for August Lunch and Learn? Yeah, let me put it in there right now. Absolutely. Yeah, you can head to the Lunch and Learn page and check it out. It's also on the homepage. If you forget, but yeah.
Oh yeah, Tiffany, that the Wired to Feel, Christine and I love it. If you're an ADHD, so Chris, we didn't say it out loud. I'm autistic. Christine is ADHD, and we both really enjoyed the book.